There's a moment in every life when silence becomes louder than any scream, when the noise of the world drowns out the one voice that matters most. For Serena Hale, that moment came on a Tuesday afternoon in a crowded emergency room, holding her little sister's hand as the machines beeped their final symphony. Her sister, just 8 years old, looked up at her with eyes that knew what was coming. The hospital was chaos. Alarms blaring, people shouting, equipment clattering. And in all that noise, the little girl whispered words Serena would carry for the rest of her life. "Sing to me, sissy. Please, just sing." Serena tried. She opened her mouth, but the sound wouldn't come. The world was too loud. Her voice was too small. And by the time she found it again, her sister's hand had gone cold. Years later, Serena would transform that grief into something beautiful. A lullaby called Rainfall Memory, the very song her sister had asked for. She would use it to save other children whose minds had been shattered by trauma, who could only find peace in the gentle rhythm of rain and a voice that promised safety. But on this particular rainy night, watching a news broadcast in a 24-hour laundromat, Serena saw something that made her heart stop. A little boy, maybe 3 years old, stood frozen at a corporate event, surrounded by camera flashes and applause. While everyone else smiled for the cameras, this child was trembling, covering his ears, his small body rigid with terror. Until he turned toward a fountain, the sound of water, and suddenly, he was calm. Serena knew that look. She'd seen it in her sister's eyes. She'd seen it in the eyes of every child she'd tried to save since. And as she watched Leon Ryu, heir to a powerful Korean-American family, find peace in the sound of water while the world roared around him, Serena made a decision that would change 3 lives forever. "The day my sister died," she would later say, "the world was so loud I couldn't hear my own voice. The day I met that little boy, I understood that some children just need one song to get a second chance." This is a story about the families we're born into, and the families we choose. About the lies we tell to protect the ones we love, and the truths that finally set us free. About a nurse who lost everything because she refused to stay silent, a powerful man who learned that control and love are not the same thing, and a child who would teach them both what family really means. This is the story of how a lullaby sung in the rain became the foundation of something stronger than blood. The laundromat hummed with its usual late-night rhythm, washers churning, dryers tumbling, the fluorescent lights flickering just enough to remind you that nothing lasts forever. Serena had worked here for 2 years, ever since the hospital took everything from her. Her nursing license, her reputation, her future. But what they couldn't take was what she'd learned in those final moments with her sister. They couldn't take the box she kept hidden in the back room, a weathered cardboard box labeled sound records in her sister's childish handwriting. Inside were notes, observations, recordings, a catalog of how different sounds affected traumatized children. Rain, white noise, heartbeats, and at the bottom, the original recording of Rainfall Memory, sung in a voice that still cracked with grief. On this particular night, a customer's daughter, maybe 6 years old, suddenly started screaming. One of the old washers had malfunctioned, clanging and banging like gunfire. The little girl pressed herself into the corner, hands over her ears, hyperventilating. The mother was frantic. "Sweetie, it's okay, it's just the machine." But Serena knew better. Trauma doesn't care what's rational. It only knows what sounds dangerous. She moved quickly, not asking permission. She unplugged the washers, creating silence. Then she reached for her phone and pulled up a recording. Gentle rain, constant and predictable. She placed it near the little girl, then knelt down to eye level. "Hey there," Serena said softly. "I know it's scary, but that loud noise? It's gone now. All you hear is rain. Can you hear it? Like it's raining just for you. The child's breathing began to slow. Serena started to hum, then sing. Rainfall memory, the melody her sister had loved. Simple words about rain washing away the scary things, about being safe and warm and held. The little girl's hand slowly lowered from her ears. She looked at Serena, really looked at her, and then did something that broke Serena's heart and healed it at the same time. She crawled into Serena's lap and fell asleep. The mother was crying. "How did you? I've never seen her calm down that fast. Who are you?" Serena just smiled, tired and sad. Someone who understands. Later, alone in the back room during her break, Serena opened the box. She pulled out a worn notebook, her sister's medical file, the one she'd copied before the hospital tried to bury the truth. Inside were detailed notes about her sister's final weeks, sensitivity to noise, calming response to water sounds, the way music could pierce through panic when nothing else could. Reading those notes now, Serena whispered to the empty room, "I wish you'd had more time with the rain, baby girl, instead of all that noise and pain." That's when she saw it on the small TV mounted in the corner, a news segment about the Ryu family's charity gala. The camera panned across wealthy donors, then landed on a small boy being presented to the crowd. Leon Ryu, the 3-year-old heir to the Ryu Group empire. The child was clearly distressed. Camera flashes popped like fireworks. People applauded, the sound echoing in the grand ballroom. And Leon stood there frozen, his small hands trembling at his sides. Then someone led him past an ornamental fountain, the sound of trickling water. And just like that, the boy's shoulders dropped. His breathing steadied. He turned his face toward the water like a flower toward the sun. Serena sat up straighter. She grabbed her notebook, flipping through pages of observations. The pattern was identical. Noise sensitivity. Water sounds as a calming trigger. The same symptoms, years apart. She pulled out her phone and searched for the Ryu family. There it was. A job posting from just 2 days ago. Private pediatric nurse needed. Discretion required. Competitive compensation. Serena stared at the screen for a long time. She'd lost her career once because she refused to lie, refused to sign papers saying a child's death was her fault when it was the hospital's faulty equipment that failed. The legal machine of the Ryu family, though she didn't know it yet, had been part of the system that destroyed her records, made her unemployable, and now they needed help. They needed her. Her finger hovered over the apply button. This was probably foolish. They were powerful people. She was nobody. But that little boy, he looked just like her sister had looked, lost in the noise, desperate for someone to make it stop. She clicked apply and sent her resume into the void. 3 days later, she stood in front of the Ryu mansion, a building that looked more like a fortress than a home. All glass and steel and cold perfection. The kind of place where emotions were probably scheduled and monitored. The interview took place in an office that could have fit her entire apartment twice over. Ryu Min-seok sat behind a desk that looked like it cost more than her year's salary, his posture military straight, his expression carved from ice. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "Your resume is sparse. 2 years at a laundromat. Before that, a gap. Before that, pediatric nursing. Terminated. No references." Serena kept her voice level. "The gap isn't empty, Mr. Ryu. I spent that time developing sound-based therapy techniques for traumatized children. Without institutional support, yes, but not without results." Sound-based therapy. His tone suggested he thought it was nonsense. "Your son," Serena said, not backing down. "Responds to water sounds, becomes distressed in noisy environments. I saw the footage from your gala. I've worked with children who present exactly those symptoms." Now he looked at her. Really looked. His eyes were dark, sharp, assessing. "You presume to diagnose my son from a news clip?" "I presume," Serena said carefully, "that you wouldn't have posted that job listing if traditional approaches were working. I'm not here to diagnose. I'm here to help. But I need you to understand something, Mr. Ryu. Children aren't machines you can program. If you want a robot who follows orders without question, you're interviewing the wrong person." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Minsok stood, and Serena realized he was taller than she'd expected, broader, intimidating in a way that probably served him well in his business dealings. "This interview is over," he said flatly. Serena stood too, gathering her bag. She'd known this was a long shot anyway. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Mr. Ryu, for Leon's sake." She'd made it to the doorway when she heard it. A child's scream, high and terrified, coming from somewhere in the house. Then running footsteps, and a small boy burst into the office, his face streaked with tears, his breathing ragged. The nanny ran in after him. "I'm so sorry, sir, he was fine. And then the gardeners started the leaf blowers outside and he just—" Leon was having a full panic attack, his small body shaking. He looked around the room wildly, searching for something, anything to anchor to. Serena didn't think. She knelt down and started to hum. Then, softly, she sang. "Rain falls gentle, rain falls slow, washing all the scary things away. Rain falls gentle, rain falls low, promising tomorrow's another day." It was Rainfall Memory. The melody floated across the office, simple and steady. Leon's eyes found hers. His breathing started to slow. He took one step toward her, then another. And then his small hand reached out and touched her throat, feeling the vibration of the song. Serena kept singing, keeping her body still, letting him explore the source of the sound. When she finished the verse, Leon's hand was still resting against her collarbone, and he was calm. Completely calm. She looked up and found Minsok staring at them both, something unreadable crossing his face. When he spoke, his voice was different, quieter, almost vulnerable. "My son has never looked at anyone like that." That night, Serena found herself in the mansion's kitchen, preparing a simple meal. She'd been hired on a trial basis. 1 week, Minsok had said, before he made a final decision. The household staff had been instructed to give her whatever she needed. She made porridge, the kind her grandmother used to make. Simple, warm, nourishing. She brought it to Minsok's office, where he was still working at 10 o'clock at night. "You need to eat," she said simply, setting the bowl down. As she placed it on his desk, her fingertips brushed against the back of his hand. Just a whisper of contact. Minsok froze. Serena stepped back, expecting him to pull away. In the brief moment of that touch, she'd felt his whole body tense, seen his shoulders start to rise in an automatic defensive gesture. But he hadn't moved his hand. He was staring at it like it had betrayed him. "Are you all right?" Serena asked. He looked up at her, and for the first time, she saw past the cold exterior to something raw underneath. That was the first time in 3 years I didn't." He stopped, seeming to realize he was revealing too much. "Nothing. Thank you for the food." But Serena had seen it, understood it. This powerful man who controlled empires and commanded respect, he couldn't bear to be touched. Until now. "I have conditions," she said, "before I agree to this position." His mask slipped back into place. "You're in no position to— Leon needs a predictable sound environment. That means I control the acoustic elements in his spaces. No sudden loud noises if it can be avoided. I need access to his room to set up proper sound equipment. And I need you to trust me when I say something won't work, even if it's what you think should work." Minsok studied her for a long moment. Then, 1 week. After that, I decide. Fair enough, Serena said. That night, she moved into a small room adjacent to Leon's. It was nicer than anywhere she'd lived in years, but she barely noticed the luxury. All she could think about was the little boy sleeping in the next room and the man down the hall who'd looked at his own hand like it was a stranger. Around midnight, thunder rolled across the sky, lightning flashed, and Leon started screaming. Serena heard the staff running, heard their helpless attempts to calm him. She grabbed her sound records box and went to his room. Leon was inconsolable, his whole body rigid with terror. The nanny looked at Serena with desperate relief. "Nothing works when there's thunder," she said. "Nothing." Serena set up her portable speaker and pulled up her rain recording. Not light rain, but heavy rain, the kind that's louder than thunder. She let it fill the room, then sat on the floor and began to sing over it. Leon's screams gradually subsided into sobs, then whimpers. He crawled across the floor to her, climbing into her lap, pressing his ear against her chest to hear her voice vibrate through her body. Serena wrapped her arms around him and kept singing, rocking gently. Rain falls gentle, rain falls slow. Outside in the hallway, Minsuk had been woken by the screams. He'd gotten as far as Leon's door before freezing, unable to make himself go in, hating his own weakness. He'd been standing there, hand on the doorframe, when Serena's singing started. Exhausted, emotionally spent, he slid down to sit against the wall in the hallway. He closed his eyes, just for a moment, meaning to get up and go back to his own room. But the song kept going, soft, steady, like a heartbeat, like safety. Minsuk's head tilted toward the door, drawn to the sound. In his sleep-deprived state, his carefully maintained control slipped. His hand reached out slightly, the way a child reaches for a parent in the dark. Inside the room, Serena had gotten Leon to sleep. She looked up and saw the door was cracked open. Through the gap, she could see Minsuk, slumped against the hallway wall, asleep. His face was unguarded in a way she suspected it never was while awake. And his hand was extended toward her voice, like he was trying to hold on to something he'd lost long ago. Her heart clenched. This powerful man, this controlled and controlling figure, was just as broken as his son, just as desperate for someone to make the noise stop. She kept singing, softer now, until Leon was deeply asleep. Then she carefully laid him in his bed and stepped out into the hallway. Minsuk didn't wake when she approached. She knelt beside him, studying his face. There were shadows under his eyes that makeup and arrogance usually hid. A tension in his jaw even in sleep. She didn't touch him, but she did whisper, so quietly he couldn't possibly hear, "You're not as alone as you think you are." Then she went to her room, leaving him in the hallway, still reaching toward a song meant for someone else. For the first time in 3 years, the Ryu mansion was quiet through a thunderstorm. The sound that filled it wasn't fear or control or the weight of expectations. It was just rain, and a woman's voice, and the fragile beginning of something none of them had names for yet. Over the following weeks, something shifted in the Ryu household. It was subtle. The kind of change that happens in the spaces between words, in the moments when people aren't performing their expected roles. Serena established routines with Leon. Every morning they would sit by the window and listen to rain sounds, real or recorded. She'd taught him to tap out the rhythm, to hum along with Rainfall Memory. Progress was slow, but real. He started making eye contact more often. Once, he even sang 3 notes back to her, unprompted. But the real change was harder to define. It lived in the small moments. Like the morning Serena was running late, throwing her hair into a messy bun as she hurried to Leon's room. She passed Minsuk in the hallway, and one of her curls caught on his collar button. They both froze. Her because she was about to apologize, him because contact with another person usually made him flinch. But he didn't flinch. He just stood very still while she untangled her hair, then continued on his way without a word. That evening, Serena had to leave the mansion for a few hours to bring medicine to Mrs. Sook, an elderly woman who'd once worked as a nurse at the same hospital Serena had. It was only supposed to be a quick errand. But Leon didn't understand quick errands. He understood that Serena was there, and then she wasn't, and the world became loud and frightening again. Minsuk tried everything. He held his son, walked with him, offered toys and treats. Nothing worked. Leon was spiraling into a full meltdown. In desperation, Minsuk grabbed his suit jacket from that afternoon, the one he'd worn when he walked past Serena in the hallway. Leon had been with them, had seen Serena adjust his collar before an important meeting with the family elders. He held the jacket out to Leon, and the boy immediately pressed his face into the fabric. The scent of cheap detergent, the industrial kind used at the 24-hour laundromat where Serena had worked, clung to the jacket from where she'd brushed against it. Leon breathed it in and quieted. Minsuk stood in the middle of his son's room, holding a jacket that smelled like a discount laundromat, and realized with absolute clarity his son had imprinted on Serena in a way he never had on anyone else. Not the nannies, not even Minsuk himself. He laid the jacket in Leon's crib that night. When Serena returned and came to check on the boy, she found the jacket there and understood immediately what it meant. Later, Minsuk would do something he'd never told anyone about. He took the security footage from Leon's room, the recordings of Serena singing, and extracted just the audio. He created a playlist on his phone, labeled it with a single word, home. Not Serena, not therapy, just home. Sometimes, late at night when he couldn't sleep, he would put in his earphones and listen to her voice. Not because it was romantic. Not because he was falling in love. He wouldn't admit that yet. But because for 33 years he'd lived in a world where human touch meant manipulation or obligation, where every interaction was a transaction. And here was a voice that asked for nothing, that just offered safety. One morning before a major meeting with the Ryu family council, Minsuk came downstairs in his usual armor. Perfect suit, perfect tie, perfect mask. But Serena noticed the tie was slightly crooked. Without thinking, she walked up to him. "Hold still." Most people in his household wouldn't dare, but Serena had never treated him like he was untouchable. She reached up and adjusted his tie, her fingers working quickly and efficiently. Minsuk stood frozen, but not from discomfort. From the strange realization that this felt normal, like something a wife might do for a husband, something that happened in homes, not fortresses. When she finished, she patted his chest once, a simple, absent-minded gesture. "There. Now you look like you run an empire." She walked away without waiting for a response, leaving him standing there, his hand unconsciously moving to touch the place she'd patted. "You make me remember I'm human," he said quietly, though she was already too far away to hear. That afternoon, Serena sat with Leon in the sunroom, mindlessly humming while he played with blocks. But it wasn't rainfall memory this time. It was something else. A melody she'd composed years ago, in the hospital, during her sister's final days. She'd written it as a gift, planning to finish it, put lyrics to it, make it perfect. But her sister died before Serena found the right words. So the melody had stayed locked away, unfinished, too painful to complete. Until now. Until this quiet moment when her guard was down and the notes just came out. Leon looked up immediately. His eyes went wide. Then, incredibly, he hummed the next phrase back to her. Perfectly in tune, continuing the melody she'd never played for anyone. Serena's breath caught. From the doorway, Minsuk watched this impossible thing. His son, who barely spoke, who rarely engaged, was making music with a woman who'd been in their lives for less than a month. He understood then what he'd been refusing to acknowledge. Serena wasn't giving Leon therapy. She was giving him love. The kind of love that didn't come with conditions or contracts. The kind that couldn't be bought. And Min-seok, who'd built his entire life on control and transactions, had no idea what to do with that. Later that day, Serena asked to see Leon's medical files. It was a reasonable request. She needed to understand his full history to help him properly. Min-seok reluctantly gave her access to the documents. Serena took them to her room and started reading. At first, everything seemed standard. Birth date, immunizations, checkups. Then she noticed something odd. The blood type listed for Leon didn't match the one listed for Min-seok. She cross-referenced with the mother's file. Also didn't match. Then she saw the birth date had been changed. There was a faint line under the printed date, evidence of a correction. She held the paper up to the light and could just make out different numbers underneath. Her heart started to pound. She pulled out her phone and took a photo of the document, then compared it to something she kept in her sound records box, a copy of her own personnel file from the hospital, the one they'd tried to alter before firing her. The same administrative marks, the same type of correction fluid, the same distinctive handwriting in the margins, a legal notation style she'd seen before on the documents that destroyed her career. Someone had falsified both files, Leon's records and hers. And whoever did it had access to serious legal and political power. The next evening, Min-seok's father arrived at the mansion. Ryu Kazuo was everything his son would become with 20 more years of hardening. Cold, calculating, utterly convinced that power was the only currency that mattered. Before the formal meeting, Min-seok did something that surprised everyone. He took Serena to a part of the mansion she'd never seen, a small room that had been recently renovated. "I had this made for you," he said, opening the door. Inside was a space unlike anywhere else in the cold glass mansion. The walls were soundproofed and painted a warm cream color. There was a comfortable armchair, soft lighting, and a state-of-the-art sound system set up to play gentle rain sounds. "You spend all day healing everyone else," Min-seok said quietly. "I thought, people who heal others should have a place to heal themselves." He called it her safe rain room. Serena stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. In 2 years, no one had asked what she needed. No one had thought about who took care of the caretaker. "Why?" she whispered. Min-seok looked uncomfortable, like kindness was a language he'd never quite learned. "Because you deserve it." It was the first time someone had cared about her wounds, not just her usefulness. But there was no time to process this gift. Minutes later, she was called into Min-seok's office, where Ryu Kazuo sat waiting. The old man got straight to the point. "I know about your past, Miss Hale. The child who died under your care, the investigation, your termination." Serena's blood ran cold. "That's not what happened." "It doesn't matter what happened," Kazuo said calmly. "It matters what the records show. And the records show you were at fault." He slid an envelope across the desk. "This is a generous severance package. Take it and leave quietly. My grandson doesn't need someone with your history." Serena picked up the envelope. It was thick, heavy. Probably more money than she'd see in 2 years. She set it back down. "You didn't just use records to destroy my career," she said, her voice shaking. "You used the same system to falsify Leon's identity. I've seen the files. I know he's not—" "Careful," Kazuo said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. "You're making accusations you can't prove." "I can prove it," Serena said. "And I'm not going to stay silent this time. Not when a child's entire identity has been built on a lie." That night, Min-seok fell asleep on the sofa outside Leon's room. He'd been there a lot lately, unable to make himself go back to his own bed, drawn to the sound of Serena singing through the walls. He dreamed. In the dream, he was back in the hospital on the night his wife died giving birth. He heard the machines failing, heard the doctors shouting, felt the emptiness in his arms when they told him both mother and child were gone. But in the dream, the face he called out to wasn't his wife's. It was Serena's. He woke gasping, covered in cold sweat. And there she was, standing in Leon's doorway with the boy in her arms, humming softly. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. But in that moment, Min-seok understood something terrifying. He wasn't protecting Serena for Leon's sake anymore. He was protecting her because losing her would break him. The next morning, everything fell apart. A file appeared on Min-seok's desk. Not Leon's real file, a fabricated one, about Serena. It claimed she'd been terminated for negligence resulting in a child's death, that she'd falsified her credentials, that her sound therapy was unproven and dangerous. Every word was a lie, built on the same system of power and corruption that had created Leon's false identity. Min-seok confronted her in his office, the file spread between them like a chasm. "Did you cause a child's death?" he asked, his voice hard. "No," Serena said. "I saved a child's life, Mrs. Suk's grandson. The hospital's equipment failed, and they wanted me to sign a statement saying it was my fault so they could avoid a lawsuit. I refused. The same legal power that made these documents about me also made the documents about Leon." She looked him straight in the eye. "The same hand that destroyed my life built yours." Min-seok felt like he was being torn in half. His father, his family's power, his entire world on one side. This woman, this truth, this feeling he couldn't name on the other. "I begged someone to stay silent once," he said quietly. "A nurse, the night Leon came to us. She knew he wasn't my biological son. I begged her to say nothing because I was terrified of losing him." He looked up at Serena. "If I believe you and I'm wrong, I lose the only family I have left. Can you understand that?" "I understand," Serena said. "But Leon deserves better than a father who chooses comfortable lies over difficult truth." Min-seok made his decision. "You're suspended, pending investigation. Please pack your things." Serena nodded once, her face blank. She'd been here before, the moment when institutions and power crushed individual truth. She went to her room and packed her single suitcase, the sound records box, her few belongings. Leon saw her carrying her bag. He didn't understand suspended or investigation. He only understood that his safe person was leaving. He ran to Min-seok, grabbing his father's hand with both of his small ones. For the first time since Serena had arrived, Leon spoke in a complete sentence. "Appa, don't go." But he wasn't looking at his father. He was looking at Serena. Min-seok froze. His son, who barely spoke, who'd never called him father with such desperation, was begging him to keep Serena. The head of security, Minho, quietly started recording on his phone. He had a feeling this moment mattered. Serena knelt down, kissed Leon's forehead, and whispered something no one else could hear. "You're braver than you know, sweetheart. Remember the rain song, it's always with you." Then she walked out. That night, alone in his room, Min-seok opened his closet. There was a shirt Serena had folded and put away just yesterday. He pulled it out and buried his face in it, breathing in the scent of cheap laundromat detergent and her subtle perfume. For the first time in 3 years, Ryu Min-seok, who controlled millions of dollars and commanded fear from his enemies, cried. Not because he'd lost an employee, because he'd sent away the first person who'd made his house feel like a home. Min-seok sat in his office surrounded by evidence, not the fabricated files his father had given him, but the real documents he'd spent the last 3 days uncovering. He'd started with the security footage, going back weeks. He watched Leon calm at Serena's voice. Actually watched himself from the outside, unconsciously leaned toward her singing while asleep, his hand reaching out like a child seeking comfort. He saw the morning she'd fixed his tie, the way he'd stood completely still, not flinching, the way he'd touched that spot on his chest after she walked away. He saw Leon humming that melody Serena had never shared with anyone, saw his son making music for the first time in his young life. Then Minho brought him the video from the day Serena left. Leon's desperate, "Appa, don't go." His small hands clutching Minsok's, his eyes fixed on the woman walking away. Minsok played it over and over. His son's first full sentence wasn't celebrating a birthday or expressing love. It was begging his father not to make the same mistake Minsok's own father had made, choosing power over people. Finally, he drove to the old hospital where Mrs. Suk still sometimes volunteered. He found her in the children's ward, reading to a small patient. "Mr. Ryu," she said, unsurprised. "I wondered when you'd come." They talked in an empty waiting room. Mrs. Suk was in her 70s now, with no reason to fear the Ryu family's power. She'd seen too much life to be intimidated by money. "Tell me about Serena Hale," Minsok said. "She saved my grandson's life," Mrs. Suk said simply. 7 years ago, he came into the ER with a severe injury. The equipment malfunctioned. The hospital had been warned about it but hadn't done the repairs. They wanted to blame Serena to avoid a lawsuit. She refused to sign a false statement. So they destroyed her. "How?" Minsok asked, though part of him already knew. "The same way powerful families always destroy inconvenient truths," Mrs. Suk said. "They called in favors. Your family's legal firm handled the hospital's defense. Documents were altered. Witnesses were paid off. Serena lost her license, her career, everything." Minsok felt sick. "We did that?" "Your father did that," Mrs. Suk corrected. "You were busy with your own tragedy that same year." She paused, then continued more gently. "The night your wife died. The night you lost your baby. I was there too. I was the night nurse on duty." Minsok's hands clenched. "I don't remember you." "You wouldn't. You were in shock." Mrs. Suk took a breath. "I need to tell you something I should have said years ago. The baby boy who was brought to you that night. Leon. He wasn't your biological son." "I know," Minsok said quietly. "I've always known." Mrs. Suk looked surprised. "You knew?" "The nurse told me. You told me. That night you said, 'Mr. Ryu, this child isn't yours.' But my father had already decided. He saw an opportunity. A baby who'd been abandoned, whose mother had died in childbirth down the hall from where my wife died. He had the records changed, made it look like my son survived when my wife didn't." Minsok's voice cracked. "I begged you to stay silent. I told you that if anyone found out the truth, they'd take him from me, and I'd have nothing left. You agreed to keep the secret. Why?" "Because you love that baby," Mrs. Suk said simply. "In that moment, I saw a man who'd lost everything choose love over biology. I thought that was beautiful." She paused. "But I've regretted it every day since, because I helped you build Leon's entire life on a lie." "Why are you telling me this now?" Mrs. Suk looked him in the eye. "Because Serena Hale lost everything for refusing to stay silent. You've stayed silent to keep Leon. Now you have to decide. Do you want Leon to grow up to be like you, or like her?" The question hit Minsok like a physical blow. That night he sat in his office with rain drumming against the windows. He pulled out his phone and opened the playlist labeled Home. He listened to Serena's voice singing Rainfall Memory to Leon, and he understood something fundamental. For 3 years, he'd been so afraid of losing Leon that he'd built the boy's entire existence on falsified documents and comfortable lies. He'd done the same thing his father had done, chosen control over truth, power over love. But Serena had walked away from power because she believed in truth. And somehow, impossibly, that had made her stronger than him. He made a decision. The next morning, Min-seok called a family meeting. His father arrived expecting a business discussion. Instead, he found documents spread across the conference table. "What is this?" Kazuo asked. "The truth," Min-seok said. He pulled out the evidence. Proof that Serena's termination had been orchestrated by the hospital and the Ryu family's legal team. Proof that Leon's birth records had been falsified. Proof of everything. "You didn't just buy me a son," Min-seok said. "You bought someone else's destroyed life to do it." Kazuo's face hardened. "I did what was necessary to protect this family. After what happened to your older brother. My brother was killed because of our family's enemies," Min-seok said. "And your response was to build more lies? To destroy an innocent woman's career? To give me a son whose very identity is a legal fiction?" He pulled out new documents, official forms, petitions, legal statements. "I'm having everything corrected. Serena's record will be cleared. Leon's real history will be documented. And I'm filing for legal guardianship under his true identity." "You'll destroy everything I've built," Kazuo said. "No," Min-seok replied. "I'm destroying the lies you built. There's a difference." He walked to the window and opened it, letting the rain blow in. Then he picked up a pen, dipped his finger in the rainwater gathering on the windowsill, and signed the first document. The ink blurred slightly with the moisture, but the signature was clear. A commitment to truth, sealed with the same rain that had brought Serena into their lives. "Water," Min-seok said, "is what brought my son peace when nothing else could. It's what helped Serena save children when the medical system had given up on them. I'm not signing these papers with lies anymore, Father. I'm signing them with the same thing that finally taught me what family actually means." Kazuo looked at his son for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he sighed. "You're stronger than I was," he said quietly. "I lost one son to the truth. I thought lies would protect what was left." He stood slowly. "But maybe I was wrong about what protection really means." He didn't apologize. Men like Kazuo Ryu didn't apologize. But he did walk to the door, and before leaving, he said, "The boy calls you father. Make sure you deserve it." 2 days later, Min-seok stood outside a shabby apartment building in the rain. No security detail, no expensive car. Just a man holding an envelope and a silver watch. Serena answered the door in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, her hair in a messy bun. She looked exhausted. "Mr. Ryu," she said flatly, "if you're here to serve me with a legal—" "I'm here to apologize," he said. That stopped her. He held out the envelope. "Your record, it's been cleared. Everything. I have lawyers working on getting your nursing license reinstated. The hospital has been encouraged to admit their equipment failure and your innocence." Serena took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were official documents, legal certifications, letters from the hospital board. Her name cleared. "There's more," Min-seok said. He pulled out another document. "This is a guardianship agreement. It names you as Leon's co-guardian, equal to me in all legal decisions regarding his welfare." "Why?" Serena whispered. "Because he chose you," Min-seok said simply. "And because—" He struggled for words. "Because my wife wrote me a letter before she died. She knew the pregnancy was risky. She left instructions." He pulled out a worn piece of paper, protected in a clear sleeve. Serena read, "My love, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I won't be there for our child, or for you. But I need you to promise me something. If you ever meet a child who needs you, blood relation or not, I want you to wear this watch when you protect them. It was my father's. It represents the best kind of family. the one we choose. Don't let our baby grow up thinking love only comes from biology. Show them that the best parents are the ones who choose to show up every single day. All my love, Elena. Serena looked up, tears streaming down her face. You wore this watch every day with Leon. I thought I was honoring her memory, Minseok said. But I was doing it wrong. I was protecting Leon with lies and power, not with truth and love. He took off the watch. The rain had settled into the metal, making it glisten. She wanted me to show him that family is about choice. I finally understand what that means. He looked at Serena directly. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not even asking you to come back. I'm just asking you to know that you were right. About truth. About love. About everything. Serena studied the documents in her hands, then the man in front of her. You did all this? Why? Because I spent 3 years teaching my son that power matters more than truth, Minseok said. And then I watched him humming a song you'd never shared with anyone, reaching for you when he'd never reached for me, begging me not to let you go. He taught me more about family in that moment than I'd learned in 33 years. He paused. And because I've spent the last week listening to recordings of your voice just to make it through the night, because I can't remember what my house felt like before you were in it. Because for the first time since my wife died, I woke up wanting to be better, not just stronger. The rain fell harder. Neither of them moved. I'm not asking you to love me, Minseok continued. I'm asking you to let me spend the rest of my life proving that I can be the kind of man who deserves to stand beside someone like you. Someone who chose truth when lies were easier. Someone who lost everything but never lost themselves. Serena was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Children don't need perfect parents. They need honest ones. They need adults brave enough to admit when they're wrong and strong enough to fix it. She looked at the guardianship papers again. I'll come back, but not as your employee, as Leon's co-guardian, as his... She smiled through tears. As his mother, if he'll have me. He's been asking for you every day, Minseok said quietly. He sings your song now, the one without words, the one you wrote for your sister. Serena's breath caught. Come home, Minseok said. Let me show you what your rain room looks like when someone's using it. Let me... His voice broke. Let me be the kind of father a woman like you would trust with a child. A crack of thunder made them both jump. And then, from behind Minseok, a small voice. Mom Serena? Leon stood in the building's entryway, having somehow slipped past Minho, the security guard, in the rain. He was soaked, his little shoes squelching, his clothes plastered to his small frame. He should have been terrified. Thunder and chaos were his triggers, but he was looking at Serena, and he was calm. Leon. Both adults moved at once, creating a shelter with their bodies, protecting him from the rain. And Leon, this child who barely spoke, who communicated in hummed notes and gentle touches, did something extraordinary. He took Serena's hand, then he took Minseok's hand, and he pressed them together, wrapping his small fingers around both, holding them in place. Then he laid his head against Serena's chest, listening to her heartbeat, and sighed with contentment. Minseok stared at their joined hands, his and Serena's, held together by a 3-year-old who understood family better than either adult had. He's choosing us, Serena whispered. Not me, not you, us. Minseok's eyes were wet, though whether from rain or tears was impossible to tell. I don't deserve this, he said. Probably not, Serena agreed. But that's what grace is. Getting what you don't deserve because someone chooses to give it anyway. She looked at him fully then, this powerful man rendered humble by a child's wisdom. A strand of wet hair fell across his forehead. Without thinking, Serena reached up and gently brushed it back. Minsuk inhaled sharply at the touch. "You make me want to be better," he said. "Not for my company, not for my reputation. Just better." "Then be better," Serena said softly. "Every day. Starting now." "I did all of this," Minsuk said, his voice rough with emotion, "for a child who doesn't share my blood. Some people would call that foolish." "Some people," Serena said, "don't understand that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. And you showed up. You fixed what was broken. You chose truth even when it was terrifying. That's not foolish. That's love." Minsuk moved closer until they were sharing the same breath, the rain falling around them like a benediction. "May I kiss you?" he asked. "Not because you work for me. Not because of anything except that you make me believe in second chances." Serena smiled. "You better. Otherwise, Leon's going to be very confused about why we're standing in the rain staring at each other." The kiss was gentle, inevitable, not the desperate passion of romance novels, but the steady certainty of two people who'd walked through fire and found each other on the other side. Leon, sandwiched between them, giggled. An actual giggle, the first sound of pure joy he'd made since entering their lives. When they pulled apart, Serena rested her forehead against Minseok's. "I lost my sister because I couldn't make the world quiet enough to save her. I lost my career because I wouldn't lie. I lost everything except that box of sound recordings and a song about rain." "And now?" Minseok asked. "Now," Serena said, "I'm standing in the rain with a man who learned to value truth over power, holding the hand of a child who taught us both what family really means. Now, I think maybe I didn't lose everything. Maybe I just had to lose everything false to find what was real." They walked together to Minseok's car, Leon between them, all three soaked through but somehow warm. As they drove back to the mansion, back home, Serena started humming. Not Rainfall Memory this time, the other melody. The one she'd written for her sister and never finished. Leon hummed along from his car seat. And then, Minseok, this man who'd built his entire life on control and silence, joined them, humming quietly, tentatively, like someone learning a new language. When they arrived home, the staff had prepared everything: Leon's room with fresh sheets, the rain room with soft lighting and the sound of gentle showers. And on the piano in the main room, sheet music for an unfinished melody, waiting for someone brave enough to write the ending. That night, after Leon was asleep, Serena and Minseok stood in the rain room together. "I've spent 3 years afraid of rain," Minseok admitted. "It rained the night I lost Elena. It rained the night Leon came into my life. Rain meant loss." "And now?" Serena asked. "Now it means you," he said simply. "Now it means home." She took his hand, the same hand that had signed documents with rainwater, the same hand that had held his son through nightmares, the same hand that had reached toward her voice in his sleep. "Family," Serena said, "isn't the one we're born into. It's the one we're brave enough to build. With truth. With love. With forgiveness for the lies we told when we were too afraid to be honest." Minseok pulled her close. Not as an employer. Not as a powerful man claiming what he wanted. But as an equal, asking permission with every movement. "Build this with me," he whispered. "Build a family where Leon never has to fear the rain, where he knows his real story and loves it anyway, where we teach him that the truth might hurt, but lies hurt worse." "We already are," Serena said. Outside, the rain fell steady and sure. Inside, 3 people who'd each been broken by different kinds of loss were learning what it meant to heal together. The melody Serena had written for her sister finally got its ending. Not as a lament, but as a lullaby. Leon sang it every night before bed. Minsok hummed it in the shower. Serena played it on the piano, and sometimes she'd look up to find both her boys watching her with identical expressions of peace. They became a family. Not because a lawyer said so, not because biology demanded it, but because they chose each other every single day, in the small moments between the grand gestures. Minsok learned to let people touch him without flinching. Leon learned that thunder was just noise, that rain was just water, that fear was something you could sit with until it got smaller. Serena learned that losing everything didn't mean the end of everything. Sometimes it meant the beginning of something better. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, all three of them would sit in the rain room, listening to the sound of water and whatever song needed singing, knowing that this chosen, fought for, truth-built family was the real inheritance. Not money or power or perfect pedigrees, but the courage to love what's real over what's easy. The rain fell, the songs continued, and three people who'd each lost their way found home in each other. Family isn't something you're born into. It's something you build with every choice you make to stand beside someone, even when the truth is painful and your reputation is at stake. Silence might help you survive, but only truth gives you the chance to truly heal. Only truth lets you hear the rain without fear. If you're in your 60s or 70s, if you've lived through family secrets and the things we just don't talk about, I want to ask you something. Do you believe that blood makes family, or is it the way we love and protect each other that truly defines who we are? Has there been someone in your life, not related by blood, who sheltered you during your hardest storms, just like Serena and Minsok sheltered Leon in the rain? Have you ever kept a secret to protect your family, and looking back now, do you wish you'd chosen truth and healing sooner? Share a memory in the comments below. Tell us about one person who loved you like family even though you didn't share blood. Maybe your story will be the rainfall memory that helps someone else stop being afraid of the rain in their own heart. Because the most powerful families aren't the ones with the most impressive family trees. They're the ones brave enough to love, brave enough to admit mistakes, and brave enough to speak the truth, even when silence would be easier. Your story matters. Share it with us.